Hey, what's up guys, Dan Javidi here. I hope you're all well. So this week we've seen a huge amount in the news about various things with the coronavirus and new local lockdowns being brought into play, a 3-tier system which will be brought in depending on your local area and the spike in cases. But one of the headlines which I think have been a little bit missed is this announcement by Boris Johnson to bring back 95% mortgages for first-time buyers and to turn generation rent into generation buy. Now at first this might not sound that great in terms of headline news. 95% mortgages are not new. They've been around for years. Sometimes they're in more abundance than others. At the moment there's not a huge amount of them, and before the lockdown they definitely started to ramp up again. But the government announcing a straightforward 95% mortgages and some of the things that he did say around why he's going to do that does make me think that this is going to be a completely different scheme. Now, if you go back to a couple of my previous videos, just as we were getting into the start of the recovery, I said that the government is not going to let the UK property market crash. It's going to bring in incentives and different schemes to help the market recover, and it's going to be targeted more at the first time buyer. And we've seen things like stamp duty already come into the mix, and I did say that I do think there's going to be more measures brought in now for first time buyers and later on when the stamp duty holiday is phased out, not stopped completely, to compensate for the market not completely falling off the edge of a cliff. But in this video, we are just going to be talking about what I think this 95% announcement means for first-time buyers, and more specifically, the difference in the criteria and why I think they're going to introduce certain different bits into that mortgage criteria and process versus the current and previous 90 or 95% mortgages. So before we get started and into the video, if you could do me a huge favour as ever and smash the like button, and don't forget to hit subscribe and the little bell icon next to it. The government hasn't released any detail around this yet, so this is purely my opinion and literally just reading between the lines on some of the little nuggets that the Prime Minister did drop in through his announcement of the 95% mortgage. So we know that the strap line is to turn generation rent into generation buy, and that was followed up by a comment, a sentence, which was people who can afford the monthly payments are not eligible for a loan, which I think is absolutely key to what this government is going to be doing with this mortgage. Now, current 95% mortgages and current help and support for people who are looking to get on the ladder for the first time have to use mortgage companies which coincide with things like Help to Buy and gifted deposits. Now, I think the government are going to be bringing in their own product, their own simple, straightforward 95% mortgage product. And with that, they're going to change the criteria and the loan criteria on how that is all calculated. And I think it's going to be based pretty much on what the affordability is for the monthly repayment, not the affordability of your wage times a multiplier based on the property value and the loan amount that you can borrow. So at the moment, you're going to get anything from 3 to 6 times your combined annual income, and that will give you a good idea on the total amount you can borrow. The total amount you can borrow added to the deposit you have will give you a budget for what you can go and play within the market, the type of property and the value of the property. So I'll give you an example. If you've got a budget of around 200,000, in Norwich, Norfolk, that will buy you a pretty decent terraced house, or a little bit further out, maybe a 2 or 3 bed semi. In London, that isn't really going to get you a huge amount, but people's wages and this multiplier, I think, has been out of date for some time, but it's been really restricted because of all the legislation and all of the regulation that was brought in after the 2008 crisis. The government didn't want banks to go and start lending in a Wild West type of way. And this is why I think it's not going to be a bank-driven scheme. It's going to be a government-driven scheme, specifically aimed at first-time buyers. We're not going to see things like Wild West lending, self-certifications, but what we are going to see is mortgages which are geared towards certain types of properties, new build properties, and lending based not on the total amount of earnings, but the total amount of affordability every single month. So if the mortgage at the low mortgage rate backed by the government over a long period of time, a low interest rate over a long period of time, means that mortgage repayment is going to remain low for the foreseeable future and isn't going to be impacted by a massive shift in interest rate rises, then that allows the government to lend more, which makes the repayments higher but still affordable for, say, a first-time buyer or a joint first-time buyer. So in London, the same scenario. If a working couple who are maybe earning 30 to 40,000 each, that's a combined income of 60 to 80,000. But in London, their wage multiplier with the current mortgages doesn't get them the loan amount that they need to go and buy a property, and they do not have the facility to put in 10% deposit or more because the property value is so high, 3, 4, 500,000. A 10% deposit is 30, 40, 50K. That's a lot of money to ask for someone to save as a first-time buyer. I think the government is going to be bringing in this 95% mortgage aimed at this market. So they're still going to ask people to save some money and put that money into play, but they're going to judge the affordability based on what they can afford to pay every single month, based on a long-term, low fixed interest rate. That gives the government the security that payment can always be paid, and it gives them a little bit of a way around the current regulations to help those people in that market. And it also gives first-time buyers a little bit more security that they can commit to a larger loan and a larger repayment based on it being less influenced by interest rate rises when they do eventually come. The other thing that I think is going to happen is a loan-based savers scheme for the deposit. This is kind of a little bit out there. I'm not 100% sure that it's going to come into play, but how else are they going to plug this gap of people saving up this 5% deposit? And I do think that if we don't see something like a government-backed, long-term, fixed interest rate, 95% mortgage for first-time buyers, then what we are going to see is a 95% mortgage in its current format, similar to what's out there, but a loan for the 5%, backed by the government to the individual that is repaid back over a shorter period of time at a higher value every single month, separate to the property purchase, to help people get onto the housing market. Now you could say, Dan, that is effectively 100% mortgage. Look, I guess it is. I guess if I'm a first-time buyer and there's an offering backed by the government for a 95% mortgage where I can then borrow the 5% deposit, then I am effectively borrowing 100% of the purchase price. But the government are going to bring in different criterias and different processes to make sure that this is aimed at the right market for the right borrower, and more importantly for the right type of property, which is going to be new build houses. The government need to drive new homes, and if new homes are being purchased by first-time buyers and first-time buyers are incentivized to buy them over any other property, there's going to be more drive and more incentive for people like me, people like you, big house builders, to build more new homes for first-time buyers, because they are going to hit a market that is pretty much there, guaranteed to buy those properties. Yes, it is going to inflate some prices. That's inevitable. When you've got a supply and demand where the supply is less than the demand and the demand grows because there's more incentive to do so, it is going to push those prices up. But the government is hoping that when that happens, more people will flood to the market and more houses will be built, which will hopefully plateau it out. And it does help fulfill that old issue of not enough homes being built in the UK. So that's it. That's really it from me. Really quick video, really quick fire on my opinion on what I think this 95% scheme is going to be for the first time buyer. Whichever way you cut it, whichever way you look at it, it's going to be great news for first time buyers. It's going to turn those people who are paying huge rents to people like me who can afford mortgage payments but don't have the deposit or the ability to get a big enough loan to buy a property in their area, which I think, even though it doesn't do me any favors as a landlord, overall it's going to help the market in the right direction. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.